Well, hello and welcome out there to everybody. My name is Monica Harris, and I am the Executive Director for Rails, the Reaching Across Illinois Library System. I wanted to welcome you to our Rails member update for November 15th. It's been a while since we've been able to have one of these, and we want to thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today. Um, we are here to help. And so please feel free, any comments or questions, anything that you have during the session, to go ahead and type into the Zoom chat box. Please use the all panelists and attendees option so everyone can see your comments. We will do our best to monitor the chat throughout this meeting, but if we don't get to your question, rest assured that we will record it and get back to you. This event is being recorded, and the recorded version of this event will be available from the Rails YouTube channel. All attendees will be muted on entry, so please keep your mic muted during the presentation portion. Hopefully you all have an agenda for the meeting, but you can see we have a lot to cover, so we're going to go ahead and get right into it. But thank you again for being here with us today. So we wanted to give you a little update about some of the things that are happening here at Rails. And so I will start with some changes that we have had in staff. As many of you know, I am relatively new to my new role at Rails. I've been here as executive director since February of 2023, but we have also had a few other staff changes since then. So I'll start by introducing you, if you haven't met him yet, to Joe Philippek. Joe, of course, began his new role as Associate Executive Director in July 2023. Many of you know Joe through his years of developing the consulting and continuing education department at Rails, which had not yet been a system service prior to his arrival. We also had the opportunity to promote Dan Bostrom to Director of Marketing and Communications as of October 31st. Dan fills the space that was vacated by Mary Witt, who retired in July 2023. And Dan first joined Rails in 2018 as the Member Engagement Manager in the Communications Department. Dan's already jumped into many new projects, including a lot of work on today's staff meeting. So thank you, Dan, for helping us out and moving this forward. Joe Philippek's promotion also did leave a vacancy for the Director of Consulting and Continuing Education. We are currently in the process of filling this role, and we expect to have an announcement about that role relatively soon. Finally, not staff, but there is a vacancy on the Rails board in an at-large seat that has a term through June 2024 that was due to a recent retirement of someone on our board. If you have ever had an interest in serving on the Rails board, please stay tuned for more information from Rails about how to share your interest in the vacancy. We'll be communicating some of that also relatively soon. We wanted to share a little bit about legislative updates that are happening here in the state. There's always a lot going on, but the Illinois Library Association's Public Policy and Executive Board shared their legislative priorities for fiscal year 2024. If you haven't seen that yet, I'm going to go ahead and share that in the chat. But that does go through some of the priorities that are going to be shared by their team at the upcoming ILA legislative meetups. Those priorities include raising the current competitive bidding threshold. The current threshold is set at $25,000, and so they are going to seek to support legislation that would look at a larger amount that is similar to today's inflationary adjustments, so that's needed. The amending the acquisition of treasury bonds for libraries. Illinois libraries are actually required to acquire treasury bonds at 50% of the total funds that are received by a library in the most previous fiscal year, where many other agencies of government in Illinois only have to fund those treasury bonds at 10% or 25%. And so they're going to seek the possibility for library treasurers to hold a bond of 10% of total revenue collections from the previous fiscal year. And then finally, the Equitable Access to Electronic Literacy Materials Act. This is chiefly concerned with ebooks and equitable pricing for ebooks. This is something that we know is very important to many of our members, and so we definitely encourage you to pay attention to some of these changes that are happening. We also wanted to offer a reminder that the Paid Leave for All Workers Act will take effect on January 1st, 2024. There's been a lot of discussion about this act and much continuing education, including that that came from Rails. The Department of Labor is in the process of continuing to prepare guidance and other resource and materials to educate employees and assist employers with compliance, but they have announced a series of webinars that will be available for those who are interested in learning more. There's actually one tomorrow at 2 o'clock and then another series in December and January. So I will go ahead and put in the chat some more information that's coming from the Labor Department about the Paid Leave for All Workers Act. And you can find more about those webinars if you'd like to attend there. We also want to encourage you, because these legislative issues and more will be discussed and shared with legislators at this upcoming series of the Illinois Library Association's legislative meetups. There are 5 throughout the Rails service area and 7 total all over Illinois. Those in the Rails service area will be taking place November 29th through December 6th. As we mentioned, there are 5 in-person meetups throughout the service area. This is the first time these meetups have been in person since 2020. So we're really excited for the opportunity to get our folks out there and advocating for libraries of all types. Registration for these meetups closes on November 24th. So don't hesitate. There will be no on-site registration available. So we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do that. And I will go ahead and share in the chat the link to the legislative meetups if you would like to learn more. Finally, many of you are very aware of some of the issues around safety and security in libraries that have been happening, especially across the summer and the early fall. Rails had a meeting on September 15th with many Illinois library directors who had experienced threats at their libraries, and then organized a second opportunity for Rails library directors to discuss library safety and security on October 5th. I really want to thank the directors who attended and shared their experiences in order to help our Rails member library directors prepare for this unprecedented moment. This was very difficult for library staff at all levels, and we are really aware of how much we still have to do to continue to help our libraries to be prepared for these moments that we have. I know many of you were aware of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and some of the reports from FBI Boston around responding to and investigating hoax, bomb threats, and swatting. There was a series of those that were available to attend where they offered a lot of really valuable advice for libraries on some of the best practice around some of these issues. I also had the opportunity to attend the Library Journal Directors Summit in Houston. I know there were a few other Rails member libraries that were able to attend that as well. Because they had a whole day that was focused on library safety and security, I really got to hear a lot of really interesting ideas, and I'm hoping to be able to share some of those with you in a more written form as we move forward. But one thing that was shared that I think that was really valuable for library staff members was a process that actually began back at the Kalamazoo Public Library and then was adopted by the Dallas Public Library, who spoke about it at the event. And it was about incident reports. So one of the things that they have adopted and changed in regards to incident reports is incident reports are public records. It's very important that they include only the facts of what happened. But many staff members really desire the opportunity to share more details and share more of their feelings about these events that they want to make sure that library administration understand. So what these libraries did was made a decision to code their incident reports by color. So they were just like a traffic light, red, yellow, and green, but they're red. What that denoted not the importance or the severity of the incident, but instead focused on how much that staff member needed follow-up conversations with administration following what was happening in that incident. What both of these libraries reported was this actually really helped their staff to feel connected and made sure that they understood exactly the things that were happening in their library, and that the leadership of those libraries could make sure that they were responding appropriately. So there were a lot of really good kind of practical suggestions that were shared in these spaces that I think more of our member libraries might want to hear about, and I'd be happy to share more of those things as we move forward. We also wanted to make sure that you were aware of our current SLATE project. Now, for those of you who may not have heard of SLATE, it stands for School Library Advocacy Through Education. And the history of that project is that in response to huge gaps in the data that was representing Illinois school libraries that were discovered by Keith Curry Lance's SLIDE project, in January 2022, Rails launched the School Library Data Project. So the goal of that project was to gather data that was related to staff, collections, and financial resources of school libraries to provide them with better targeted resources and support. In recognition of all of the things that are happening around school libraries, and especially to demonstrate our commitment to the school library community, the SLATE project was born in partnership with many other library organizations that support school libraries. And so I'm going to share for you the Rails page that kind of gives an overview of all the things going on with the SLATE project, including some of the data visualizations that are available. This project has been led here at Rails by data research specialist Jeanette Derucki. I know many of you were able to attend some of her programs at recent IL and ILA conferences about the data that they have recovered. But we did want to note that the dashboard launch is going to be happening officially in January of this year. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this. And so we wanted to let you know that that's coming soon. And we're really excited to share with you because I think this will be a really important advocacy tool, for school libraries in Illinois. Finally, we have also through this project been in touch with Jesse Irvin from ISBE about the distribution of information about the importance of school libraries as a one-pager to school administrators, and that includes that information about the value of school libraries. We're really excited and hopeful that we can continue this connection and conversation with the Department of Education because we think it's all very important information to share about the great work that's happening. We also wanted to share more about our partnership focus. So many of you have heard all of the things that are happening in Rails, and this is not new. We have had lots of wonderful partner organizations for many, many years, but it is part of the Rails strategic plan to include the importance of strengthening all of our collaborative relationships with our partner library organizations, because we can always do so much more when we're working together. So we had a joint staff meeting with our sister system, the Illinois Heartland Library System, on August 29th for the first time in about a decade. And it was really exciting to be together with all that leadership at the Illinois State Library. I do want to thank the Illinois State Library for hosting us on that day. And we're looking forward to planning a joint board meeting together for spring 2024. We're also continuing to work with partner organizations on issues around broadband, which you will hear Ann Slaughter talk about in a bit, as well as the Illinois Library Association's More Than a Building project, which you probably saw got funding of $10,000 from the Secretary of State's office, also focused on issues of library safety and security, and a statewide group that is focused on supporting school libraries and library workers, the Partnership, which is a monthly meeting that has been in place for many years, and some really wonderful work, including the SLATE project, have been a result of that. So that is kind of a very brief overview of some of the work that is happening at Rails, but I do want to encourage you, if you want to keep up with what's going on at Rails, there are so many ways to do it. The number one thing we always want to tell you to do is make sure you are subscribed to eNews. eNews comes out every week and will tell you all the newest things that you need to know. Watch the Rails Minute if you're interested in checking up a video between Dan and I as we talk about some of those things that are going on here at Rails, and that's produced by Ola, who's here with us today as well. That is also recently a podcast, so if you just want to fit a 5-minute podcast into your feed and hear a little bit about what's going on with Rails, we want to encourage you to do that as well. And of course, you can also follow us on all of your favorite social media. We're there and ready to share all of the great things that are happening here at Rails. So I wanted to open it up if there are any questions or comments that we can answer. Wanted to do that before we move on to some of our really great speakers we have today. Okay, well, thank you for the comments in the chat. I see one from Ryan about the interesting concept around incident reports. Ryan, I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit more about what they discovered, but I really thought it was a great process and one I could see working really well in libraries. And a great comment from Monica Caldecott about SLATE and all the great work that Jeanette is doing on behalf of the school librarians. We really appreciate it. Okay, we are going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is some more information about our new equity, diversity, and inclusion member resource, Freedom Lifted, and that's with Joe Philippek.
Right, thank you, Monica, and good afternoon. Nice to be with you all. So as some of you know, I'm sure, one of the four strategic goals of the Rails of our strategic plan that was implemented early last year is focused on equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. And within that strategic priority, the first objective is for Rails to provide resources that will support member libraries and their efforts to provide equitable, diverse, inclusive services within their communities. And the reason that's in our strategic plan, of course, is that as we talk to all of you, our members, that was articulated to us that was a priority and really a way that Rails could support your library in this area. So since that time, between our own offerings within Rails Continuing Education and those that we've made possible through our CE event grants, we've been able to offer around 20 different trainings over the last 18 months to 2 years on different topics within EDI. And of course, as many of you also probably know, we had our EDI cohort last year, which 35 people from across Rails were able to participate in last year. But for this year, for our fiscal year, we really wanted to be able to offer a training resource that would be available to everyone, all of our membership on their own schedule and accessible to staff across all our member libraries, and something that would perhaps be part of a learning initiative with their colleagues that they could do alongside their colleagues at their library. So with this aim in mind, Rails has acquired a subscription to Freedom Lifted's Justice at Work online course, which is now available to staff at our member libraries. And in a moment, I'll drop the link to that in the chat. If you looked at your e-news today, you'll also find information on that there as well. If you're not familiar with Freedom Lifted, it's an organization that is centered on social justice and equity education. Their founder and CEO, Mia Henry, has done a lot of work around social justice and libraries. Some of you may have even participated in the Public Library Association's Social Justice and Libraries 2-day workshop, which they offered a few years ago, and that was facilitated by Mia. She has remained very active in training for libraries since that time. And in fact, if we have any libraries from Prairie Cat in the member update today, I know Mia was just doing the keynote at the Prairie Cat Users Group Day just back in late September. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen so you can take a quick look. And thank you, Ola, for dropping a link to that in the chat. So on our website, you will find, there we go. Just a short description again of what this course is. You'll see a short video if you want to see Mia Henry talking about Justice at Work and the course specifically. There's a quick tutorial video about how to set up an account. Very simple though, that once you get to this website and you want to make sure that you log in with your L2 credentials to the Rails website, because this is a resource that is intended for Rails members only. So you want to log in so you have access to this page. There is a link there to click and set up an account. The only steps for setting up an account are really a name and an email address. We'd encourage you to use your library affiliated email address. There'll be a couple confirmation emails that you'll receive, and that will also give you information how to access the course. So as far as the training content itself, and let me show that. 1 second. There we go. You'll find that there's about 6 to 7 hours, I would say, of training content in the Justice at Work series. One thing I'll point out in the beginning is that in several instances, it does refer to this as Justice at Work for public libraries. But the content you'll find, I have found to be very sort of foundational. And I think that you're going to find it, whether you're in a public or an academic or a school or a special, there's a lot of foundational information that's going to be applicable no matter what your community is, who they represent. So while you'll see the language of public libraries, know that this is a resource really for all of our members across our different types. If you look on the left-hand side, you see that the content is organized around some core topics, including identity, oppression, solidarity, etc. And if I just open up one of the chapters, you can get a sense of the kinds of content that you'll encounter within each chapter. There are articles, there are of course videos where you'll see and hear Mia talking about a variety of topics. There are some articles to read, there are even quizzes, so you can just sort of get a sense of your own understanding of the content. And of course, the benefit of a resource like this is, again, you can do it on your own schedule, and that if you've created an account, it will remember your place and you're able to go back to it. So it's not as if you have to turn this out in one day. You'll have access to this content and be able to work at it on your own schedule. Once completing the content, there is a sort of what's next, where there are different resources that for those that want to continue learning, continue exploring different, you see a workbook in there, reflections. So it really is intended to be not just passive learning, but to give you and your staff things to think about during and after they've completed this training. There are some additional resources from Freedom Lifted that we've included on our website, but you can also find them on the Freedom Lifted website itself. I'm going to show here there is a discussion and facilitation guide. And this, I think, is really to help libraries that want to maybe have some debrief discussions after engaging in the course content. And as you can see, each chapter gives you a number of discussion questions that can sort of guide those conversations that you might be having with your staff. Another resource they give us and that we give to you on our website is a planning guide, which provides some ideas on how a library might want to plan, strategize, and communicate about this training with their staff. So if a library, again, wants to structure this training as a group, it gives something of a roadmap for how to approach that, including, as you can see on the screen here, a timeline of how to think about the kind of chapters and the content, and then gets into kind of some implementation strategies. There are some other resources within the Freedom Lifted website, such as discussion boards that gives you the opportunity to have some conversation and sharing beyond just, again, within your library, but through other users that are doing this course as well. You know, it is definitely not our intention for this resource to replace all the other continuing education, right? We're going to continue to offer other learning opportunities, knowing that for a topic this large and all encompassing, we really need to approach it from a lot of different angles. But ultimately, we hope that this is a resource that is going to reach a lot of people, that it's going to be a source not only of learning, but hopefully inspiration, both individually and just collectively across our libraries. So we definitely encourage you to now go ahead and check it out, sign up, explore it, use these resources, and definitely reach out if you have any questions. So I think I will stop there and pause for any questions. And if not, that's okay. You know, limited availability in Noreen. So limited, not in the sense, again, this is not just only one person from your library can sign up. This is for all staff. Anybody has access to this as long as they're on a staff member at one of Rails member libraries. In terms of a time frame, we have access to this for roughly a year. Probably, I think our contract ends in October at some point, and then we'll, you know, depending on usage and interest, have the ability potentially to renew if we think that it's going to be a resource for all of you. But know that you have plenty of time as well to take advantage of this. Okay, well, reach out again if you have questions. We're really excited to be able to share this with you, and we hope that you find it helpful. So with that, I think I will pass things off to Ann Slaughter, our Director of Technology Services, who's going to give us an update on what is going on regarding broadband in Illinois. So Ann?
Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here with all of you. I'm going to bring you up to speed, no pun intended, on what's happening with broadband right now, the state and federal level. It's a big deal because Illinois has been allocated over $1 billion of federal broadband funding, and that's coming through two different programs, both which are part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The first one is the Broadband Equity and Deployment Program, or BEAD. That's going to help lay fiber for high-speed internet, and that's aimed at getting households and community anchor institutions like libraries connected to high-speed internet, many of which do not currently have access to high-speed internet and or high-speed internet at affordable rates. And then the Digital Equity Act also has funding attached to it, and that's going to support digital inclusion projects that will be aimed at helping residents access affordable internet service, as well as devices, training, and other programs and supports. And all of this is about increasing the ability of all residents to participate in critical life activities that happen on the internet, like education, telehealth, business development, modernized agriculture activities, community safety, and just to name a few. So the federal government is requiring plans from all of the states that are attached to both of these funding programs. And their plans must include and address all covered populations, which are groups defined by the Census Bureau that are based on demographics, socioeconomic status, and other factors like race that define marginalized groups. And community anchor institutions are also critical and required to be addressed in these plans, libraries of which are some of the community anchor institutions that are defined. And libraries are key to these plans, both in terms of broadband deployment, recognizing that many libraries don't have access, but then also with our role in building greater digital equity among Illinois residents. Over 72% of Illinois residents represent at least one of these covered populations, and of course, we serve all of them at our libraries. So just a few definitions. Digital equity is a condition in which all individuals and communities have the information technology capacity that they need for full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. And kind of flowing from that, digital inclusion is about the activities that are necessary to ensure and build digital equity, that everyone, including the most disadvantaged, have access to and use of information and communication technologies like broadband devices, digital skills training, technical support, and then even applications and content that are accessible is incredibly important. And digital inclusion, of course, requires really intentional strategies and investments to reduce and eliminate the barriers, the historical, institutional, structural barriers that people have faced in trying to access and use technology. Finally, digital literacy, or often referred to as digital skills or digital skill development, is the ability to then use these technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information. And the skills that are required for that are both kind of on the cognitive and on the technical side. And, we know that having these basic skills today is as important as being able to read any text. We also know that there is a significant divide in our state, in our communities, in our society, in digital skills and broadband access. Similar to real estate redlining, there is digital redlining in the deployment of of broadband by internet service providers, which is something that is, specifically to be addressed with these new funding programs. And this was amplified by the pandemic, as we all know. So, supporting access to internet devices and opportunities for digital skill development are core library services, certainly for public libraries, but really for most libraries of all types. But we also know that many libraries, like I said, in Illinois don't currently have broadband or adequate technology equipment. So we're concerned right now about the availability of this funding to make sure that all of these libraries get connected. And then, even once libraries are connected, there are other barriers and resource gaps similar to those faced by residents, in getting and maintaining technology. And all of this work kind of statewide will be accelerating. So it kind of follows that there will be an increased demand for all these services at libraries. And obviously right now there are a lot of big decisions being made as to how all of this funding will be distributed from the federal government. Then there's also a lot of additional funding dedicated at the state level that actually predates this federal funding through the Connect Illinois initiative. And one really important thing that we've recognized is how important the statewide library voice is in these state level broadband decisions and this whole kind of ecosystem. We want to make sure that libraries are prioritized in the deployment of funding and in the resources that are needed to help build library capacity to provide these critical services. So one of the things that we've done at Rails is to form kind of a digital equity coalition aimed at representing the statewide library community with our partners at the Illinois Heartland Library System, along with CARLI, the Consortium for Academic and Research Libraries in Illinois. And our goal with this partnership is to represent and support library needs and the library role in providing these services. And then also to, we're connecting outside of our own organizations with other statewide library leaders and member libraries as this work grows. And one of our initial primary objectives is to help to draw attention to these plans that I mentioned for both the BEAD and Digital Equity Act funding distribution. So I'm putting a link in the chat to a website. I'm not sure that is actually going to turn into a link, but you can paste that into your browser. The actual URL will turn into a URL on the CARLI website because they were kind enough to set that up for us very quickly. So that website has resources and will continue to be refreshed. We started that for something that is now completed, which is the public comment period for the BEAD funding, but there is more to come. And one of the things that you'll see there is an outgrowth of our partnership with Heartland and CARLI, which is an open letter signed by all of our respective executive directors as public comment to the BEAD plan, which libraries are welcome to draw from at will. So again, that public comment period is over, but there will be another one coming for the Digital Equity Act, which I will touch on in a moment. And then we're also connecting with this kind of larger statewide ecosystem through the Illinois Office of Broadband and the Illinois Broadband Lab, collecting and sharing data, and just trying to help kind of amplify the library role and voice, and then moving forward to help support library access to some of this grant funding that will be flowing, to make sure that there are programs developed that have multi-agency impact and multi-type collaboration, which are things that from the statewide perspective, we're in a good position to help support. So how can you get involved? The first thing you can do is visit that broadbandforlibraries.com website. That contains resources covering kind of the state and then the more global perspective of all of these issues. And then kind of start to look at your own organizations and your community. There are plenty of avenues to, and I'm sure many of you are already aware of issues and activities that are currently ongoing in your local communities, however you're defining community. And then to think about, the specific ways that your library is improving digital equity in your communities and your organizations through your services, and your kind of philosophical grounding in these issues. And then get ready to share these things with your decision makers, along with the capacity that your library needs help building to continue to be able to provide these services. There will be engagement opportunities forthcoming from the Illinois Broadband Lab. They have that's a partnership between the University of Illinois system and the Office of Broadband that is dedicated to research and community engagement. So please watch for those, both from the organizational perspective and your individual resident perspective. And then also visit the Office of Broadband website, and I'll put links in the chat to both of these things as well. You can learn more about what they're doing with state funding as well as the federal funding plans. There are already plans that have been released that are very interesting and useful. And then get ready to read and respond to the digital equity plan that we expect to have released in January for public comment. And we will be providing additional guidance to you all in making your comments, as well as providing some comment from the statewide perspective. So I'll put those links in the chat, and also extend thanks to the Illinois State Library and Greg. They have been wonderful in helping to support and encourage this work, along with the Illinois Library Association and other partners. And feel free to reach out to me individually as well. Would love to chat more with any of you about this and hear what you're doing. So I think I went a tiny bit over time, so I'll pass it along now.
Thanks, Anne. As you can hear, Anne is very passionate about this and has been doing a ton of work around this issue. This is a lot of funding, and it's really important that libraries and their perspectives are included. So please visit the website, look at all of the steps that you can take to try to make a difference on this. And thanks again, Anne, for sharing all this. We really appreciate it. It is my pleasure now to introduce Illinois State Library Director Greg McCormick, who will give a little bit of information about some things that are happening at the Illinois State Library level.
Thank you, Monica. It's good to join everyone today for this update. It's been a while since I've sat through one of these with the Rails group, so but it's nice to be here. And Dan, thank you for extending the invitation to me for this. So I was asked to specifically address two big issues at the State Library, and both are very current, and working on them even yesterday and this morning as we also I also prepared for this meeting today. So the first being the e-resource and database package that the Secretary of State's office, and we're in the midst of procurement for, and then also an update on Public Act 103-100, the book banning legislation in regard to library grant eligibility. So on the database package side, this, of course, was one of the very first initiatives that the Secretary embraced when he took office last January, when we met with him on something that really needed to be done. And this $5 million was placed in the Secretary's budget for FY24, and will be a permanent request ongoing to acquire a statewide database package. We know how important this is to Illinois libraries, and in looking at data from 2021 from public libraries, and we don't have it for all types of libraries, but 45% of the public libraries in the state indicated they have no online resources available. We have looked very closely and worked with our colleagues at the Michigan State Library, the New York State Library, and the Indiana State Library on what they were actually procuring on behalf of libraries in their states, and actually ended with looking much more closely even at the Michigan proposal and modifying their most recent procurement to specifications for what could occur in Illinois. That package offers 96 different resources or databases to their library community, which is rather significant. Now, we know what the cost is in the other states. We know our state is larger than Michigan, so it's going to cost more than what they're paying, but we're very similar to what occurs in New York, not only with the number of libraries, but also this package would enable some library resources to be extended to non-residents of the state, very similar to what the state of New York does, making a difference in our state. So let's hope that we can achieve this. We, again, know what it costs New York, and we think we're right in line to have an impact there. So in all, there would be 1,757 library agencies, public schools, academics, special libraries that could have access to these resources. Our timeline is now, this is currently in the Secretary of State's procurement office, because it's a procurement through, as part of the Secretary of State's government, it's handled through that department. We are hoping to have results of this request for proposals in early spring, so that we can make a more formal announcement on what will be available. Monica and I spoke earlier today even about, and I have discussed this at the 2 Directors University presentations on we're going to make this available, but we caution everyone to not make decisions on your current subscriptions before this is released and you know what is available from us. This will definitely have an impact on local budgets. You could eventually utilize financial resources that you're expending on this locally, take advantage of what the state offers, certainly have an impact on people who don't have anything now. I think it will be beneficial to so many. We've looked at the statistics of the impact that it has occurred in the states of Michigan and New York. And even at the community college level, they are huge users of these resources in the other states. So we're anxious to get this underway and give you more information. But right now we have to go through a very large procurement of these items and see where we land. But I think we are hopeful that we're in a very good place on this. So might we expect an announcement this summer? Actually, you can expect an announcement this spring, as long as this procurement goes through the way it is currently planned. So regarding Public Act 103-100, and the question was specifically asked regarding public library per capita equalization grants, because that and public library construction grant applications are going to be the first to see the impact of this. But really addressing this more, the impact as a whole, this isn't a topic that I don't think is foreign to anyone at this point. Public Act 103-100 passed in the legislative session last spring. It was signed into law in June. It becomes effective January 1. It is applicable to eligibility for grants of all types: school library funding, public library per capita equalization funding, technology grants, construction grants, LSTA funding for whatever grant category, Project Next Generation, whatever that may be. The system area and per capita grants, because Chicago Public Library System and the 2 regional library systems at least have ebooks. What types of libraries are impacted? Well, again, it could be any type depending upon what you're applying for from the state library. It's under every grant that falls under the Library System Act, which is not just about library system funding, but it's from where all types of grants for libraries in the state flow. So again, schools, publics, academics, specials, and the library systems. We have just completed the first notice regarding the administrative rules, which were adopted in support, which define a bit more of what will be expected of library grant applications. We're now on second notice, and the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules will hold a hearing on December 12 regarding the rules. Our office does not expect any change to what we put in place in those rules, and we did have comments from the library community, and I would say largely favorable. Those who expressed concerns really had concerns with the law itself and not with the rules, but we addressed that appropriately in the comments back to those who sent those to our general counsel's office. So we do believe this will be in place. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and let's make sure. There we go. Can everyone see it? All right. So this will be the certification that will be a part of every grant application now. And we are in the process of getting this in place for actually in the next coming few days for public library per capita and equalization, and an announcement regarding the public library construction grant funding. But as you can see, applicant will be requested to submit this document with their grant application, indicating they have adopted the American Library Association's Bill of Rights, whether that's in their collection development policy or reconsideration policy, wherever they may have placed that in a policy, or in the alternative, you would check the second box and you would be required to provide a written policy or procedure, because in the case of school libraries, there are typically procedures and not policies at a school district that would be approved and enforced, and you would be requested to submit that for review with the grant application. Also, with this submission, you're agreeing that the applicant is agreeing that during the terms of the grant award, the state library and the state librarian has the ability to review any final decisions for reconsideration of library materials during the term of the grant award. So it's very straightforward, very consistent with what the legislation says, but would be required for each and every one application from here on out. So I will try to stop sharing if I can here. I think that went away, did it? Okay, very good. So that's really all I have today. And thank you all.
Thank you, Greg. Really appreciate that. At this point, I am going to change gears here a quick second, and I am going to talk to you a little bit about the My Library Is grant program. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to do this very quickly. I'm sorry for the haste, but the good news is there's a lot of more opportunity for you to learn about these, because we've been doing these office hour sessions yesterday. have one tomorrow if you want to sign up. So, so first of all, I just want to say there's some big changes to the grants that I want to make you all aware of. And the first is right there on the screen under eligibility. So this is a big change this year. These My Library is grants, which we launched earlier in the month. They were originally, the last 3 years, they've been available only to school libraries. And this year, we went back to allowing all types of libraries to apply. So everybody who's from a Rails member library at this event today, you have the option to apply for this grant. The purpose is really, it coincides with the My Libraries campaign, which is to help libraries tell their story. And you can apply for up to $5,000 in funding for any project, either ongoing or something you're proposing new here. The deadline is early February. It's Wednesday, February 7th. And if awarded the funds, you have up to a year from the time the funds are awarded to complete the project. So just a couple of things. It's pretty simple to apply, and I'm going to just mention this briefly. I hope everybody in this call has their L2 account. If you don't know your L2 information, please go get that first, because if you go to the Rails website and look under grants, you're not going to be able to see the grant if you're not logged in. But once you have that and your idea, all you need for your application is a project title, a budget, a description, a statement of outcomes, which is really important, and then a statement of equity, diversity, inclusion. That's a big part of Rails' mission and our actually in our strategic plan. So we hope that it's in yours as well. We do allow people to apply by video, and so in lieu of a description, and you can also include your statement of outcomes and statement of equity, diversity, inclusion in your video. The only thing you can't include your video is the budget. You do have to submit the budget as an Excel document or Word document or something like that. And we won't host the video for you, unfortunately. You have to put it onto something like Google Drive or YouTube or Vimeo, and then share the link with us. But this is a fun way to do an application. Our reviewers are always interested when people apply by video. And for those of you that might not like writing or might feel intimidated by writing these big long applications, it's a creative way to apply. I'm going to break down this very, very briefly. I will give a much more lengthy overview of how these are funded in the office hours event. But basically, we have a $100,000 pool to work with, and we've split them up by type. So there are 4 types of libraries, as you can see here, and each type has $25,000. And then within that type, we've kind of subdivided a little bit so that these are competitive grants, and you are competing against other libraries of your type and size. So for example, an academic library, we've grouped that into 2 different groups. And so 4-year institutions are competing against 4-year institutions, 2-year institutions are competing against 2-year institutions. And that's the same for all of the types of libraries. We've kind of divided them up so that, again, you're competing against other libraries of your size and also of your budget. So we tried to be as equitable as possible. And this is a very complicated explanation, but if you want to know all about it, you can come to the Office Hours event tomorrow. We're recording both of these sessions, so both of these will live on the Rails YouTube page. We'll probably have yesterday's up either later today or tomorrow. And then if you want to come to tomorrow's event, it's in L2. You can register and attend, and I'll give you as much explanation as you really want to hear. So that's it for the My Libraries grant. I hope you all have a chance to apply. I think it's a wonderful option, so I hope you can check it out.
Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate the update. I can see there's a message in the chat from Chris Seabuck about the disposal of local records. So just a brief update. At the last Public Policy Committee meeting from the Illinois Library Association, they did mention that they are still pursuing this as something that they're looking to, but instead of a legislative solution, they are looking at more conversations with the Secretary of State's office to explain why the process is arduous and the types of process that they would be looking forward to. So I'm hopeful that this is still something that we can continue to pursue. I agree that this is a hugely important topic that we want to continue to push for in Illinois. I came from a state where records disposal was really simple. So we want to make sure that we have a chance to do that as well. So thank you for the question. Okay, I think now on our agenda, we have the opportunity, if anyone has library news that they would like to share, feel free to go ahead and share it in the chat or raise your hand if you want to speak it out loud. Anything anybody wants to share. We'll give everybody a chance to type if that's something you're doing. Well, if there is not any new library news to share, I just want to thank you again for being here with us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk with all of you. And if you have any questions following up, or you'd just like to get in contact with Rails staff to ask any question at all, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We really appreciate it. Oh, Penny, the update that you have about the Paid Leave Act, that is the PLAW that we referred to earlier. At this point, we do not have any additional exemptions before the January 1st deadline, but there is still public comment on the rules as they have been proposed. I think that's coming up November 29th. So I would encourage any library that feels that they would like to comment on that process to do so. Please take a look at the Paid Leave for All Workers website link that we noted. Thank you for that question. Okay, and a question from Jennifer about when will the recording be available? It doesn't take us too long to get it up there, Jennifer. Hopefully within the next couple of days, you'll see it on the Rails YouTube page. Thank you all very much. Again, please reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, or anything at all. Nice to be with you today, and thank you for being here. We appreciate you.